Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to my hometown, to the city where I was born in King's Heath, just over there. I saw my dad born in Saltley, over there, and my mum born in Small Heath, over there. Welcome to the town that Manchester calls God's own city. Welcome to my hometown. It's home to globally successful manufacturers. It's home to globally successful universities. And it's home to that team that's ahead of Manchester United in the Premiership, Aston Villa. Welcome to the capital city of the West Midlands region, a region of some 5.6 million people. More than the population of Scotland. If the MPs of any party that this region returns to Westminster next May cannot vote on taxation in Scotland, indeed, if the MPs that Glasgow return to Westminster next May cannot vote on taxation in Scotland, it'll be an unacceptable, disgraceful farce of so-called democracy that those Why should those self-same Scottish MPs vote on taxation that affects me here in Brum? I don't always get to speak in such salubrious surroundings as this. During the last general election campaign, I did what I always do. I spoke at meetings of all the parties, so that I could set out what business needs from our elected politicians. And I found myself in the community hall of a suburb in one of our great northern cities. It was pouring with rain. It was a Wednesday night. The meeting was due to start at 7:30. It was 7:29, and the audience numbered 1. Oh well, better get on with it, I suppose. I did. And the chap actually turned out to be a great audience. He laughed a couple of times. I think he clapped once. Anyway, when I finished, I said, I think I'll skip the Q&A and I'll get on my way. And he said, I'd rather you didn't, actually. I said, why is that? He said, because I'm the next speaker. I am delighted that fate hasn't befallen me today, but it wasn't going to, given the next speaker. Now, as you all know, I'm a crossbench peer. I'm non-aligned from the tribalism of party politics. I don't do party politics. Indeed, I'm the only minister this country has ever had, that didn't belong to the party of government at the time. Business is my constituency. The businesswomen and the businessmen of our nation, creating wealth on a socially inclusive basis to the benefit of everybody. Just think about it. When a business makes a profit, there's only one of 3 things it can do with it. It can reward the shareholders who took the risk by way of capital gain on sale or a dividend, and they'll pay tax on it. Or they can keep it in the business by way of retained profit, and they'll pay tax on it. Or they can employ people and pay them, bonuses and all, and they'll pay tax on it. And that tax goes to pay, in part, the wages of our nurses, our doctors, our teachers, our soldiers, our policemen, our prison officers, that we all need so very much, and they'll pay tax on it. But if it wasn't for the profit that business creates, for the tax that it generates, for the jobs that it makes, there would be not one job in this country. There would be no public sector at all. That is how important business is. And it really does worry me that so many politicians, so many trade unionists, so many educationalists, environmentalists, and dare I say it, journalists, They appear from what they say and what they do that they just don't get it. They think money grows on trees. Businesses, large and small, have every right to expect an elected government to help create an environment where risk can be rewarded, where investment is encouraged, where we can get our goods to market and our people to work, where hard work and enterprise is welcomed, not set to wither on the vine of regulation from big government, and to drown in the mire of anti-business mood music encouraged by vote seekers. But business can only expect that right to be respected and delivered upon if it's socially inclusive in the way it goes about creating its wealth. It must train its people better and constantly. It must be sensitive to the environment it affects by its actions. And it must set an example. We tell a nurse that sadly, but rightly currently, he or she is only going to get a 1% pay rise. And yet we watch some CEO receive a huge bonus. It's irrelevant that such a bonus is deserved. A bigger pay rise for the nurse would definitely be deserved. It just sets a lousy example, period. Business must reach down, round, and under those in our society who can't. For those who won't, I'd stick an Exocet up their chuff, personally. But for those who can't, those who think that opportunity has passed them by, business has got to reach down, round, and under and help take them to a place where they can. For me, all my life, social inclusion and wealth creation have gone together. And business is the route to that. And business must meet politicians halfway in delivering it. But I want to hear politicians of all parties saying loud and clear that there is nothing wrong with making and keeping a profit. That in the most globally competitive economic environment the world has ever seen, where India wants your lunch, where China wants your dinner, businessmen and businesswomen are not to be the whipping boys of some populist ideology. I learned a long time ago, you shouldn't bank on what politicians say. You should watch what they do. Anyone can talk about getting behind business, being on the side of business, helping business succeed. It's what's actually done or not done that matters, not what they say. Now, of course, we all want the low-paid to take home more money. But it has to be earned from greater productivity in the nation. There is no escape from that basic economic truth. Any other way, and eventually it will all catch up with you again. And we're off to inflation, increased deficit, and inefficiency. So don't just give them more of other people's money. Equip them. Enable them to earn more themselves. Fund more apprenticeships. And banish illiteracy and innumeracy to where they belong, in the dustbin of a bygone age. I want an end to that disgraceful statistic that has blighted our nation for decades, where, after our taxes have paid for 11 years of full-time, free, compulsory education, from 5 to 16, that's what your taxes pay for. Half, yes, half, the young people who leave school at 16 do not get grade C or above in English and maths. And we want to take on China, do we? As William Gladstone said all those years ago, and it is still true today, you don't set the poor free by giving them money. You set the poor free by giving them an education. We in business need a bit of help too on the job creation front. The only tax that doesn't relate to income received or property acquired, held or disposed of is employers' national insurance contributions. This is my pet hate, ladies and gentlemen. The Chancellor is quite right to call it a jobs tax. An employer pays money to the government just for employing someone, even if no profit is made at all. It isn't a tax on the bosses. It only applies if someone is employed. No job, no employer's NIC. The current NIC allowances for small businesses brought in by this government are extremely welcome. I hope that all parties will commit in their manifestos to going further until, when the country's finances allow, it is completely abolished. Link its abolition I want to see linking NIC for employers' abolition to training more and young people. Now do those two things together and you've got a real win-win. But above all of that, I beg from the bottom of my heart, whoever is our Prime Minister next May in this country, whichever of the parties form the next government, please, please do not wreck this economy. Unemployment is at its lowest since October 2008. It's at 6.2%. France has over 10%. It's coming down very quickly. It was 7.7% a year ago, the fastest reduction in unemployment in this country for 25 years. The claimant count is now under 1 million at 966,500. 774,000, that's 750,000 people just over, are in work more than a year ago. And 30.61 million people are in work in this country. That has never been achieved in the history of the United Kingdom. 30.61 million people go to work every day. It's an all-time record. Our growth is higher than Germany's, and our inflation is so low that the Governor of the Bank of England has to write to number 11 every month to apologise. After years of sticking to and tolerating unpopular policies, after years of the amazing British workforce getting stuck in and delivering the goods for no extra reward, I include the public sector and the private sector in that completely, our country is just on the threshold at the moment of reaping the benefits. The coalition government should take its fair share of plaudits for that. But we're not completely out of the woods yet. The number of the economically inactive isn't falling. Pay rises, except in manufacturing, are not yet filtering through, and they need to, and quickly, so everyone feels they're sharing in this new beneficial economic vista. But please, politicians of all parties, please don't mess with our economy. What we have is just too precious to be gambled with on the altar of experiment or some tribal ideology. So, let us now hear from the country's finance director. I'm sure he has much to say to everyone in our country, including the women and men in our business community who are vital to the future of all of us. He's the man with the plan, and it worked. Rudyard Kipling in If had a wonderful line. If you can trust yourself when all men doubt you. Well, politicians, commentators, and economists, they were all saying you were on the wrong track. But you stuck to your guns, you ignored the unpopularity, and you did what was right for our country, not party. Your next speaker deserves a personal pat on the back for that, and I give you, ladies and gentlemen, the Chancellor of Exchequer, George Osborne.
Thank you. Thanks for that introduction. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you, Digby, for that warm and typically robust Birmingham welcome. Gathered here in this hall are the representatives of Britain's great party of progress, the party of enterprise and discovery, of liberty and the law, of the wide open seas and global free trade. And we meet to lay out our case before the nation and to ask it to choose the future, not the past. Now, in Broad Street, just around the corner from this conference, stands the statue of the Golden Boys, the three great British pioneers, Matthew Boulton, William Murdoch, and James Watt, are studying intently their plans for the new steam engine. It's an image that captures a golden age for our country, when the spirit of invention was alive and the marriage of business and science made everything possible. A time when we faced the future with confidence, and we weren't afraid of the big answers to the big questions. I want us to be that Britain. Let's raise the ambition of the nation so that everyone has a chance to succeed. I believe it is perfectly possible for Britain to be the most prosperous major country on earth, the most prosperous, the most dynamic, the most creative, but only if we, in our generation, provide the big answers to the big questions, only if we choose the future, not the past. And for anyone who doubts this is possible, just think about what we've done together these last 4 years. 4 years ago, our economy was in crisis. Our country was on the floor. But we did what we Britons do best when we're being counted out. We picked ourselves up, we sorted ourselves out, and we got back in the fight. We set out our long-term economic plan and worked through it. And then 2 years ago in this very hall, when the clamour of our opponents was loudest, and they insisted we should abandon that plan, we held our nerve and recommitted ourselves to the course we had set. Today, I can report this to you. Britain is the fastest growing, most job-creating, most deficit-reducing of any major advanced economy on earth. Britain, we did this together. We made a choice to leave behind a past of spending beyond our means, a past of borrowing from our children. We chose the future, not the past. We've come this far. The deficit falling, investment rising, record numbers of new firms, business growth faster in the north than anywhere else, long-term unemployment down, youth unemployment down, the fastest fall in unemployment on record, almost 2 million new jobs. Our long-term economic plan is working. These are the statistics. Behind each number is a person, in fact, millions of people, who because of what we've done together now have a job, who because of what we've done together now run their own business, who because of what we've done together are providing for themselves and their families. And everyone in this hall should be proud of that. But let me tell you, I don't stand here marveling at how much we have done. On the contrary, I am humbled by how much more we have to do. The debts that need reducing, the small businesses that need supporting, the jobless who need employing, the infrastructure that needs building, the better future for Britain that needs securing. We here resolve we will finish the job that we have started. Now we know that beyond the confines of all these party conferences, Britain still faces huge economic risks. At home, though we've brought it down, there remains a large budget deficit and our national debt is dangerously high. Abroad, our biggest markets in the Eurozone are not growing. Anyone who thinks that Britain can ease up should look across the Channel. Look to the countries who thought they were out of crisis, eased up, and so now risk returning to crisis. And then there is the wider world beyond. The borders with Russia are aflame, a terrible virus sweeping through West Africa. And we're engaged in a generational struggle against barbaric Islamist extremism. Our armed forces are once again risking their lives to protect our freedom. Let us together salute their courage. Now, any and all of these events have an impact not just on our national security, but on our economic security. These are big questions, but they're not the only ones we face. We are also living through an economic upheaval as big as the Industrial Revolution. Every single day, new technologies and new companies and new economies are fundamentally shaking up the established way of doing things. It's extraordinarily exciting, and we, as Conservatives, applaud the power it places in the hands of citizens. It's never been easier for thousands to start their own business in Britain and reach the whole world. But a single app can appear overnight and disrupt an entire industry. So it can be exciting, yes, but unsettling too. For this technology brings intense competition that spells rapid decline for any sector or any country that fails to keep up. These are big questions that require big answers, and it is our job to provide them, and the next Conservative government will. That is what our party has always done. Apply our values and ideas to the challenges of the age and the march this country towards progress. And that is what we will do again. Labour can't do that. Did you see that speech last week? Ed Miliband made a pitch for office that was so forgettable he forgot it himself. But I have to tell you, in all seriousness, that forgetting to talk about the deficit is not just some hapless mistake of an accident-prone politician. It is completely and totally a disqualification for the high office he seeks. The economy may mean nothing to Labour, but it means everything to the people of Britain. It means our security and whether we pay our bills and provide for our families and have rewarding jobs and enjoy decent retirements. And do you know what? There is a fashionable claim made these days, a claim that the link between the prosperity of the national economy and the prosperity of the people who live in that economy has been broken. And I want to take that head on because it is a dangerous fallacy. Ask the millions of people who lost their jobs, whose incomes were cut, whose aspirations were destroyed by Labour's Great Recession. Ask them whether they think the link between their lives and the lives of the economy, and they will tell you it is broken, and they will tell you from bitter experience they pay a heavy price for that. And ask the people who have bought a home because we created the conditions for builders to build, and they will say, yes, it's the economy that builds houses. And ask the millions each day who rely on our NHS too. Last week, you heard promises that were built on sand. Let's be clear. You cannot have a properly funded National Health Service unless you have a properly run economy. Put another way, it's only because we were willing to take difficult decisions on spending in other departments that we are able to increase the NHS budget every year of this Parliament. So don't let anyone in this party concede the NHS to Labour. They would ruin our NHS. The real party of the NHS is in this hall today. The idea that you can raise living standards, fund the brilliant NHS we want, or provide for our national security without a plan to fix the economy is a nonsense. It is the economy that creates jobs. It's the economy that pays for hospitals. It's the economy that puts food on the table. And we're the only party in Britain with a plan to fix the economy. That is the leadership we have offered the country these 5 years in office. And that is the leadership we should offer for the next 5 years. True leadership, leadership that is working, the leadership offered by our Prime Minister, David Cameron. And Britain faces some big choices. Choices about whether we're going to live within our means or let rising debts threaten our economy again. Choices about whether we're going to win business and investment or drive it away. Choices about whether we're going to tackle youth unemployment and poor standards in our schools or let down a generation. Choices about building the infrastructure our future economy needs or letting it decay. Choices about whether we are going to trust hard-working taxpayers to make their own decisions about their lives and their communities or take control away from them. The past or the future. That is the choice Britain faces. And we in this hall have no doubts. We will choose the future. Now, we face some immediate choices about protecting Britain's hard-won economic stability. Earlier this morning, just before I came on, you heard from Paul Bunyan, and he gave us a powerful testimony of what economic security looks like in real life and what happens when you lose it. And he knows because 7 years ago, he was working in a branch of Northern Rock in Newcastle. He watched the queues of people desperate to withdraw their savings before the bank collapsed. He saw Britain on the brink, and he says we must never go back, and so do we. Economic security is at the core of what we Conservatives offer. The security of knowing that our banks are safe, so the next Conservative government will ring-fence high street branches from the riskier city trading floors. The security of making sure our housing market doesn't bring down our financial system. So I'm giving the Bank of England extra powers to curb property booms and stop mortgages being given to people who cannot afford to repay them. We also need the security of knowing that Britain can pay its way. The budget deficit is approaching half what it was when we came to office, but it is still far too high. So we will see through our plan to eliminate it. And then to ensure our country is never in this position again, we must run surpluses in the good years. And when I say surpluses, I mean the government raising more than it spends. Now, Labour claim they will balance the books. But the independent experts tell you the truth. Their plans would mean they would borrow £28 billion more each year. Running an overall surplus is the only sure way of getting our dangerously high national debt down. And let the message go out from this conference. After what they have put the country through, we will fix the roof when the sun is shining. And that presents me with a choice. Indeed, it presents all politicians with a choice. We can either pretend to the British people before the election that this can be done with hardly any cuts, that's what we saw last week, or we can level with people now and tell them the kind of difficult decisions that are still required to fix the economy. I've done this job for almost 5 years, and I can tell you, it's only because we've leveled with people that we've been able to take them with us on the journey our country has had to take. Here are the facts. The latest Treasury estimate is that to eliminate the deficit requires a further £25 billion of permanent public expenditure savings or new taxes. And I tell you in all candour that the option of taxing your way out of a deficit no longer exists if it ever did. In a modern global economy, where people can move their investment from one country to another at the touch of a button, and companies can relocate jobs overnight, the economics of high taxation are the economics of the past, and we choose the future. The problem for a modern country like Britain is not that it taxes too much, it is that it spends too much. Taxes too little, spends too much. And that's at the heart of what we offer. And the proposals Labour present to the country for higher taxes on incomes, higher taxes on business, taxes on savings, on investments, on finance, on pensions, homes, and on jobs would be an economic disaster for every person in the United Kingdom. And by the way, when Scotland is rightly given greater control over its taxes, I suspect the people of Scotland will choose to put them down, not up. And let me be clear. We will honour in full our commitments to Scotland. And we are also absolutely clear that as Scots get more control over their taxes, it is right that Northern Ireland, Wales, and England should get more control over their taxes and their laws too. Now, I'm not going to pretend that finding £25 billion of spending savings will be easy, but nor is it impossible. We've already found £100 billion of savings in this Parliament, So we have the track record to show it can be done if you have discipline and grip. In every election I have fought, Conservatives have argued you can have better public services without borrowing and spending more, that it's about making government more efficient and effective, and Labour have argued you cannot. I believe that the record of this government has settled this argument for good. Labour were wrong and we were right. Theresa May has reduced the Home Office budget by almost 20%, but crime is down. Michael Gove and Nicky Morgan have cut the Education Department bureaucracy in half, but school standards are up. And please join me in thanking our outstanding Conservative Treasury team who are helping us to achieve this. David Gork, Andrea Leadsom, Priti Patel, Paul Dighton, and my brilliant PPS, Rob Halfon. I can see Rob liked that bit of the speech. So to eliminate the deficit and finish the job, we will reduce Whitehall spending by at least the same rate for the first 2 years of the next Parliament as we have done through this Parliament. That will save at least £13 billion. We will go on restraining public sector pay, and there will have to be less welfare spending too. Now, welfare spending makes up a third of the entire government budget. We are going to live in a country where the elderly have dignity in retirement and the vulnerable and people with disabilities are protected. But we can't afford to live in one where we spend £100 billion on welfare payments for people of working age. £100 billion. When we have such debts, and even with the reforming decisions that Ian Duncan-Smith and I have taken, benefits have risen more than earnings since Labour's Great Recession. That is not sustainable for any nation, and it's not fair either. So I can tell you this today. Working age benefits in Britain will have to be frozen for 2 years. This is the choice Britain needs to take to protect our economic stability and to secure a better future. The fairest way to reduce welfare bills is to make sure that benefits are not rising faster than the wages of the taxpayers who are paying for them. We will provide a welfare system that is fair to those who need it and fair to those who pay for it too. Now, this freeze in working age benefits saves the country over £3 billion. It's a serious contribution to reducing the deficit. Pensioner benefits and disability benefits will be excluded. And to those in work, I see that say this: where is the sense in taxing you more, only for you to be given some of your own money back in welfare? The best way to support people's incomes is to make sure that those out of work get a job and those in work pay less tax. And that is why I am the Chancellor, in budget after budget, who is increasing the tax-free personal allowance to £10,500, meaning working people on low and middle incomes keep up to £800 more of their hard-earned money. It's why we've cut taxes for savers, for homeowners, for small businesses, the self-employed, cut taxes for everyone who pays their council tax or fills up their car. And that is why we have cut jobs taxes and increased work incentives. And as a result, there are almost 2 million more in work. That is the choice that we have made. And the good news is that youth unemployment has fallen sharply. The sad news is that there are still too many young people who have fallen into a culture of welfare dependency and a life on the dole. It's a scar on our society. It's a tragic waste of human talent, and we can end it in the next Parliament. So let this party of progress make another choice. Let's abolish long-term youth unemployment altogether. So here's how we'll do it. We'll replace job seekers' allowance, reform housing benefit, and take the benefit cap we've introduced down to £23,000 because families out of work should not get more than the average family in work. And all of these savings will be used to fund 3 million new apprenticeships, 3 million more chances for a better life. So we help our citizens get jobs instead of more immigration from abroad. We have a choice between paying our young people for a life on the dole or giving them the keys of opportunity. And be in no doubt which side this party is on. We choose their future. So this country must pay down its debts, drive down its deficit, pull down its taxes, pull up its young people. And it must be the place where business invests and businesses thrive. And I thought Digby spoke incredibly well about this. It's not by accident that more than 2 million private sector jobs have been created under this government. It is the deliberate policy of this government to support job creators. And yet, for the first time in my adult life, we have a Labour Party that is positively anti-business. It came through in every sentence. Ed Miliband remembered the bit we wished he'd forgotten. Now, by the general election, we will have delivered on the promise I made to you in my first speech as Chancellor here in Birmingham. Britain will have the lowest, most competitive business taxes of any large country in the world. And unbelievably, Labour want to reverse this. This is their policy, to be firm against firms, their business to be against business, as if they'd forgotten that people work in businesses and their wages come from firms. We instead are proud to be the party of firms and of businesses, of people's incomes and people's jobs and people's livelihoods. For when we choose to be on the side of enterprise, we are choosing to be on the side of the British people. This party of progress is the party of free markets and of fair markets too. How dare the Labour Party attempt to give lessons on fairness? Hang on, who's the party restoring the real value of the minimum wage? Who is the party tackling abuse of 0 hours contracts? Who is the party capping payday loans? Not 13 years of Labour. They were too busy capping each other. It is us, the Conservative Party, who understands markets must be fair if they are to be free. And it is this pro-business Conservative Chancellor who says to some of the biggest technology companies in the world this today: you are welcome here in Britain with open arms. You have the advantages of our skilled population to work for you, broadband connections to deliver your services, and our NHS to keep your employees healthy. Advantages that have to be paid for. So while we offer some of the lowest business taxes in the world, we expect those taxes to be paid, not avoided. And some technology companies go to extraordinary lengths to pay little or no tax here. If you abuse our tax system, you abuse the trust of the British people, and my message to these companies is clear. We will put a stop to it. Low taxes, but low taxes that are paid, part of our effort to reduce the deficit. For our choice is that we are all in this together. And it was this government that started the global work on changing international tax rules. This autumn, we will lead the world in implementing those changes here in Britain. The future for Britain is to be a low-tax country where people play by the rules. The future for Britain is to be a pro-business country. And we also have to build for that future. Now, big decisions on infrastructure have always been controversial, and they always will be. The railways were bitterly opposed in the 19th century. The motorways were opposed in the 20th century. Let's face it, even today, this country has spent 40 years failing to take a decision about building a new runway in the southeast of England. And there are always 100 reasons to stick with the past, but we need to choose the future. We should ask ourselves what the golden boys in that statue outside this hall would have done. What choices would those great Britons have made? Would they have said, our trains may be packed, our roads congested, our transport system can't cope, but we won't build any more roads or new railways? No, they would not. Would they have said, yes, we mined for coal deep underground and explored for oil beneath our seas, but we should leave the extraordinary shale gas reserves untouched beneath our feet? No, they would not. Would they have said that the country that built the first civil nuclear power station should not build any more? No, they would not. Would they have said, it's okay if our children can't afford houses so long as we have them? No, they would not. And would the golden boys, who were part of an age of enlightenment that discovered the vaccine for smallpox, have said, we're not going to have any research into those genetic medicines and crops that will save countless lives in the future? No, they would not. We must choose the future. We will tap the shale gas, commission nuclear power and renewables, and guarantee our energy for the future. We will build the high-speed rail, decide where to put a runway, and support the next generation with starter homes in a permanent Help to Buy. We must learn from the past, not be the past. Decide or decline. That is the choice, and we must choose the future. And you know what? This future can't just be about prosperity for one corner of our country. I grew up in London, and I'm full of wonder at the way it's become a global capital, attracting the young, the talented, the ambitious from across the world. And that is a huge strength for the whole of Britain. But I'm also the first Chancellor for almost 40 years to represent a constituency in the north of England. And I can see the risk our capital city is going to dominate. It's not healthy for our country or our economy. And the answer is not to pull down or hold back our greatest global asset. That would be crazy. The answer is to build up the rest of the country, to create a northern powerhouse of the cities across the Pennines, to connect up the southwest, to put the Midlands at the center of our great manufacturing revival. Now, people know that the disparities between different parts of our country have grown up over many decades under governments of all colors. Let's treat people as adults, not pretend we can reverse something like this overnight. But equally, let's not give up, say it can't be done. Look at what Michael Heseltine achieved in the docks of Liverpool and London. This party of progress knows what it takes to create flourishing economies, successful businesses, modern high-speed transport, big science investments, top universities, and the strong leadership that comes with powerful elected mayors. These are the ingredients of a Northern Powerhouse. That is how we deliver prosperity and security for families across the nation. And it is one of my driving missions to do everything I can to build it. Let us choose today to make reducing the gap between North and South, London and the rest, one of the central ambitions of the next Conservative government. There is one final choice we should make, a choice this party of progress always makes, and that is to trust people with their own money. That's why in my budget this year, I applied that philosophy with far-reaching new freedoms in the way people can access their pensions. Now, these freedoms are based on the simple idea that people know better how to spend their own money than governments do. This party that gave people the right to buy their own home is the party that is now giving people ownership of their own pension too. But I want to go further. There are still rules that say you can't pass on to the next generation any of your pension pot when you die without paying a punitive 55% tax on it. Now, I could choose to cut this tax rate. Instead, I choose to abolish it altogether. People who have worked and saved all their lives will be able to pass on their hard-earned pensions to their families tax-free, effective from today. Children and grandchildren and others who benefit will get the same tax treatment on this income as on any other, but only when they choose to draw it down. Freedom for people's pensions, a pension tax abolished, passing on your pension tax-free, not a promise for the next Conservative government, but put into place and delivered by Conservatives in government now. Now, we are 8 months away from one of the most important general elections in a generation. We can face it with confidence, for we go to the people as the party of progress. For 5 years, Britain has pursued a clear economic policy when all over Europe there has been crisis and uncertainty. Britain has been the lantern in the storm. Now we seek a new mandate as the party of jobs and security and a strong Prime Minister against the party offering higher taxes, more debt, and Ed Miliband. And we are going to offer political resolve and economic competence, a confident future for Britain as the most prosperous country in the world. And we're going to say to the British people, choose jobs, choose enterprise, choose security, choose prosperity, choose investment, choose fairness, choose freedom, choose David Cameron, choose the Conservatives, choose the future. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.